Hello, I'm Timo Myllymäki, a brass and woodwind player, repairer and enthusiast from Finland. Recently I had up for a full service a Selmer Mark VI alto and a Selmer Mark VI soprano at the same time. It was fun to work with those horns because they are so well built. Well, everybody knows that Mark VI is a legend. But I decided to sum up some things that what makes these instruments so popular that even today some players play only with those. So here's the Selmer Mark VI story. Henry Selmer began their musical instrument business in 1885 in Paris by starting to manufacture clarinet mouthpieces and reeds. While Adolphe Sax had invented the saxophone already earlier in the 1800s, it wasn't until the beginning of 1900s that saxophone became a truly popular instrument, first in United States. Also Selmer began to make saxophones in 1920s, and to strengthen their business they bought the existing saxophone workshop of Adolphe Sax in 1929. So when the forthcoming World War II was knocking at the door, Selmer Paris had already made some name of a maker of some fine musical instruments and as the successor of Adolphe Sax. Their balanced action model was gaining footprint and was considered an excellent saxophone. In the United States, however, manufacturers like Conn and Busher were dominating the saxophone market. But when the World War II started, it ceased the saxophone manufacturing in US as American factories were diverted toward the war effort. However, Selmer in France had a chance to maintain its production. So the coincidence of availability problems of American saxophones combined to the somewhat cheaper prices of European saxophones led to a favorable situation for Selmer. When Mark VI was introduced in 1954, it became quickly a viable option for players. Selmer Mark VI was also a marketing success story. Selmer promoted Mark VI as a groundbreaking instrument with 19 advantages compared to its successor. The changes included especially fixes in keywork and ergonomics, and Selmer claimed that the Mark VI would help players to achieve those difficult passages now with more ease. And it wasn't false. Compared to other saxophones of that day, Mark VI was considerably easier to handle and had more even intonation. One of the marketing ideas in USA was specifically the name Mark VI. Other manufacturers had flamboyant names like Conqueror, Aristocrat and Imperial. But Selmer's marketing agency got the great idea to call it just Mark VI, as it was the 6th generation Selmer saxophone. It was registered as a trademark, and that's why American assembled Mark VIs have the R symbol on them. So when we combine all of the aforementioned things, like American saxophone industry slowing down, Selmer's good reputation and marketing efforts, Mark VI's advanced features and affordable price, it led to the fact that all great players of that day acquired a Mark VI. Seeing jazz giants like John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins and Dexter Gordon playing their outstanding passages with a Mark VI made everybody want one. It is also an interesting angle that although Selmer was mostly considered a maker of some fine classical and symphony orchestra instruments, it was the jazz saxophone players that lifted the company to its peak. Mark VI instruments were manufactured in France in Selmer's Mantes-la-Ville factory near Paris. They came to America as ready assembled, but there was no lacquer on them and the pads were not glued in. When they arrived in Elkhart, they were disassembled, padded, engraved, lacquered with the American-style dark lacquer, or then silver-plated, and then finally set up. The Mark VI's for European market looked considerably different because they didn't have engravings by default, and the lacquer was more transparent. Another notable difference was the bell bow band in European models, which held the bell to body with just tightened screws. American models didn't have the band, but the bell was soldered to the body. The craftsmen in French factory didn't work from any set of plans or blueprints. They continuously tweaked the instruments as they made them and changed the bore, bell and neck dimensions as well as other variables. This wasn't done in any consistent manner, and there are no records when the changes were introduced. There were models with high F sharp or low A. Some models had nickel silver keys, and some rare models were even colored with red, blue, black or white lacquer. So each specimen of Mark VI was a unique instrument in that sense. The French craftsmen were masters of their trade, but with all of these continuous changes, it is maybe true that there was some variation in quality. There is a rumor that the early Mark VI models with serial numbers under 100,000 have better quality than the later models. It is maybe due to the fact that Selmer did raise the output of their factory to match the increased demand. But personally, I would be quite cautious to say that the later Mark VI's would be of lesser quality. But then, after 20 years of triumph, in 1975, Selmer announced to discontinue Mark VI altos and tenors. Now, to understand the Selmer Mark VI mystique, you have to look not only at what happened when the production began, but also what happened when the production were ceased. Selmer decided that it was time to move on. They proclaimed that they had created something even better, another classical design, the Selmer Mark VII. They said they were shifting over to strict templates so that the variance in instruments was replaced by conformity. The handcrafted individuality of Mark VI was transferred over to more effective and uniform production of Mark VII. There was a problem, however, that Mark VI had established its place as de facto standard saxophone. So when Mark VI players tried the new Mark VII, they were expecting something similar, but it didn't feel, look or play like Mark VI. The ergonomics of Mark VII were different. Some say it was clumsier. It was heavier in weight, and the sound was darker. It wasn't an inferior instrument, but maybe it was too different compared to Mark VI. And that's why players didn't want it. So, in a way, Mark VII created even more legend status for Mark VI. So, what are those technical features that are characteristic to Mark VI, and what Selmer claimed to be advanced compared to all previous saxophones? Here's some of them. The octave mechanism is faster and easier to play. Left-hand pinky table has a floating B-flat key which helps the intervals in lower notes. Low C-sharp mechanism is lighter to use while still holding the key closed securely. G-sharp mechanism, which is by the way the most common place to leak in a saxophone, has easy adjustment screws. Adjustable right-hand thumb rest. Ring-type bell brace which absorbs hits and doesn't hinder the tone. domed metal resonators or tone boosters like Selmer called them. These are not the original metal rezos, by the way. The original metal rezos were later switched to nylon ones, which were lighter but had nearly similar acoustical features. Cloth guard to protect keys from entangling to your cloths. More robust C and E flat key guards. Changed bore taper which impacted the instrument's tone. Selmer Mark VI was clearly a waymaker instrument in its time. The keywork and ergonomics have become the standard by which every modern saxophone has been made up to this day. Even after 70 years there has been little or no change in the ergonomic layout of a saxophone. But besides the technical features, it is the sound which is maybe the most characteristic feature and also the most debated. There is some mystique built around the sound of Mark VI, and undeniably some hype too. You can find so many adjectives that describe the sound in numerous ways, like focused, sparkling, or with a particular core which is so unparalleled that others won't come even close. But in my opinion, maybe the best adjective is versatile. If you want it bright and edgy, it can do it. If you want it fat and warm, it can do it. The Mark VI is not a one-dimensional instrument bound to some conventions. If you have the skill, it can do whatever you want it to do. It won't get in the way. There are many great saxophones out there today which are far more superior to the Mark VI, with a lot of more precision and quality, but they are all based on the design of Mark VI. So, I would characterize the popularity of Mark VI like this. It is a legend, there's no denying. It has some mystique to it. It has good ergonomics and intonation. It was the first modern saxophone. It is a good benchmark instrument. It can get the job done. And finally, it has a versatile sound to suit different styles. I hope you found this video useful and informative. If you like my videos, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.